Hey everybody, welcome to the Lionheart Institute podcast. I'm Richard Thomas.
And I'm Tiffany Thomas.
And we want to welcome you to a Thomas Table Talk, where we are going to be addressing some pretty incredible things going on in the world that we live in.
For sure.
And my head's been spinning. I'm excited about it. But can you share with the people a little bit? A couple weeks back we gave a giveaway.
Right.
And we hit some incredible numbers, some incredible participation.
Yeah.
However, tell the people what happened.
So we are so grateful for everybody that we actually had a lot of interaction on this giveaway. Lots of new subscribers, comments, and likes, which is greatly appreciated. However, everybody kind of missed the fourth step of the giveaway, which was to email us the password that is in video 1 of How Do We Fight Against Hate in America. So we're going to extend this for another week to give everybody an opportunity who wanted to be entered to do that. So go back to video 1. Find the password, email it to us at the lionheartinstitute@gmail.com. We will include all that in the instructions. It is also in the instructions of video 1, part 1 of How Do We Fight Against Hate in America. So make sure you go back, email us the password, and we will get you entered in to win that $50 Amazon gift card.
That's awesome. So now, for purpose of length of video, this is probably going to be a 2-part series.
Right.
And we want to hit it. We want to talk about some really important things going on in the world today, including this whole concept of cancel culture.
Right.
So let's rush to it.
Yep.
Okay. Some great stuff that we've got on the docket today. And one of the main topics that we're going to talk about is this whole concept of cancel culture.
Yes.
Which really equates to what is the truth of accountability in modern society.
Yeah.
Right? We've got this whole mindset of, are we able to cancel people? Is it our right to cancel people? But really, when we talk about a cancel culture, we're talking about an accountability culture.
Yes.
And for so long, there's been no accountability. So let's break it off from the word go and start us fast, girl.
I actually didn't know what cancel culture meant. I had to look it up because I'd been hearing people talk about it. I've been hearing people talk about, oh my gosh, our First Amendment rights is being taken away. We're all being censored. I've heard conservatives and Christians are being persecuted. They're under attack. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. What is going on here? Did I miss something? And so I had to actually look this up and figure this out because I honestly didn't understand what it actually meant. So what it comes down to is that conservatives feel they're having their First Amendment rights taken away by silencing or censoring their freedom of speech.
And there's been a movement of fear in that way for a long time, right?
Yes.
A lot of people with this whole concept. I think I started seeing it really about 10 years back.
Right.
It really started gaining momentum 5-6 years back. Mm-hmm. And now it's a steady flow of channels on bug out and escapism. And, I have a dear friend that just moved to Costa Rica. If you're watching, I love you. With this whole mindset that America is losing its value in what we were established in and what we were founded in. And people are running to the hills because of it.
Yeah, so there was, a few weeks ago, there was a situation where, if you are aware of who Piers Morgan is, he is a British tabloid, gosh, I don't even really know what you describe him, but he basically was paid for his opinion. Commentator, thank you. Yeah. That's the perfect way. So he wanted to input his opinion and talk about the interview between Oprah and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And so Meghan Markle had spoken about her mental health issues and what she was experiencing. And he went on to basically say, I don't believe her. I think she's a liar. I doubt very seriously she had suicidal thoughts. Like, she's just making all this up. So,
and this is triggered based on race issues in London, right?
Some of the racial issues she dealt with.
Being royalty and having that first kind of black stigma attached to her being in royalty.
It really came out when she had her son, and there was apparently comments made questioning what her son's color was going to be when he was born.
Gotcha.
So what ended up happening is Piers Morgan ended up throwing a little bit of a temper tantrum, walked off the stage and quit, but then the show eventually just decided to cancel his show altogether. Now, people lost their mind over this. How dare he lose his job because he stated his opinion and the Duchess didn't like it and she got him fired. Now, the truth is The studio had over 40,000 complaints that day based on what he said. I mean, who is he to say that she didn't have mental health issues?
Sure.
Who is he to say she didn't have suicidal thoughts? And for him to call her a liar when she was expressing what was going on in her mind during that time, people were very offended by this and felt that he was completely out of line.
Now, it would be a stretch to say that Meghan herself actually got him fired, right? I mean...
Well, that is what everybody believes.
Right, sure.
Well, and the thing is look, she complained. Of course she complained. She was very upset by what he said. But again, as were a lot of people. But this escalated because Billy Graham's son decided to write a statement about Piers Morgan. And for whatever reason, he decided to somehow wrap Christianity in with Piers Morgan and how they were all being attacked. Now, I do not know Piers Morgan's religious beliefs, but I doubt that he is really that attached to Christianity for Billy Graham's son to include him in that. So basically, you had a two-part article grouping Piers Morgan in being canceled and Christianity somehow being canceled as well. And so what ended up happening, people lost their minds. I got into a few debates of my own from people on this topic. Because look, the truth is, if you've watched Piers Morgan, in my opinion, he is a despicable human being. He has spent his lifetime making money off of tearing people down, saying horrible things to people,
Sure.
about people. This is what he was paid to do. So for him to be grouped in essentially as this good Christian man, kind of like what they did with Trump. They made him out to be their savior, essentially. And that is kind of what they've done now with Piers Morgan, for seeming to forget all the horrible things that he has said and done over the years regarding people. So,
Now, just for clarity's sake, Piers Morgan is based in the United States.
no, he's in London. He's in England.
Because I want us to talk a little bit about the First Amendment and
Yes.
how that plays into it. But what is interesting is it doesn't play the same role in England as it
Right.
does even here.
Right.
But let's look at it not from their perspective. Let's look at it from our perspective, because I think it's a huge talking point.
Yeah.
You know, everybody wants to cancel. Now, Republicans are crying that we're trying to cancel Christianity. And we're trying
Right.
to, which of course is the furthest thing from my heart,
Right.
or my mind, right?
Right.
Or that liberals are trying to cancel culture, right, from the standpoint of everything
Yeah.
that's traditional. However, what they don't want to recognize and realize is that every time I turn on the TV, they're talking about canceling LeBron James and
Yeah.
you know, trying to do away with the NBA and the NFL because they're voicing their opinions. So
Right.
I do want us to get a little bit, if you don't mind, into the First Amendment and how it functions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is kind of where this came into place, because these arguments that I was having with people in debates, they were saying this is a violation of our First Amendment rights, right? That if there's consequences, then it's not free speech, and therefore our First Amendment right is gone. So I actually looked this up because you know me, I like to research and I like to give correct information. So I actually looked through the U.S. Constitution and read what it said. So this actually comes from the U.S. Constitution of the United States of America, written in 1789, revised in 1992. First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So now comes into play, that's what most people know that, right? That's pretty common knowledge. So the question is free speech really free?
Sure.
People are saying if there's consequences, there's no free speech, so there should be no consequences. However, if you research a little further, you will find there are exceptions to free speech in the United States of America. There is a section within the Bill of Rights in the National Archives that says there's exceptions to freedom of speech in the United States, which refers to categories of speech that are not protected by the First Amendment. According to the Supreme Court of the United States, the U.S. Constitution protects free speech while allowing for limitations of certain categories of speech. Now, these categories are obscenities, fraud, child pornography, speech integral to illegal conduct, speech that incites imminent lawless action, insurrection, speech that violates intellectual property law, true threats, and commercial speech such as advertising, defamation that causes harm to reputation is a tort and also an exception to free speech. So, ladies and gentlemen, there are consequences to our actions. Not everything we say, we are allowed to just say. We have long gone with this ideology that we can say whatever the hell we want to say without there being consequences, but it is not constitutional. The problem is, people have not been held accountable.
There you go. Tell it.
So what's happening right now, this whole cancel culture issue, is people are finally being held accountable for their atrocious behavior, their bigotry, their racism, all of these horrible things that they feel they have the right to say.
Yeah.
Guess what? You don't. Now you can say it, but there are consequences. And this in no way is a violation of your First Amendment right.
I really, really value the deep research you did. Okay? Deep into the Constitution, I think it's extremely valuable that we understand our constitutional rights, that we understand what is constitutional in the presentation of free speech,
Right.
that we ought not have a president just standing at a podium shooting rhetoric of defamation, of hate, of bigotry, and so forth that has damaging consequences to the reputations of others.
Yeah.
And or incites riot, right? Those kinds of things. But can we just look at this from a common sense standpoint for just 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay. The man has a television show. Okay. The man gets paid to do that television show. He's paid because an audience wants to see him do that television show.
Yeah.
Right? He is paid to do that television show because the audience wants to see him do that content. As soon as the audience doesn't want to see him do that content, okay, it's supply and demand.
Yes.
We no longer demand your supply because we do not like your content. You have to produce content that people want to view. So just from a common sense standpoint, the man said things that were out of pocket.
100%.
Being out of pocket, the world looked at what he said and said, we do not value that approach to humanity any longer.
Yeah.
We have watched, as we've seen 400 years of canceling culture. We've watched as you have silenced the voices of the poor for years and years and years. We've watched as you have silenced the voice of women, minorities, refugees, right? We've watched as you've done these things, and now we understand our position of influence. See, the time has come now where people understand that they are the employers, not just the employees.
Right.
And so it's a reciprocal nature. Now, I'm not saying based on free speech that we shouldn't speak our minds. As a matter of fact, I think that everyone should speak their mind. I think people should be honest about what's in their hearts.
Right.
I think that a racist, if they're a racist, I would rather them be overt than they are covert.
Yeah.
Tell me what you are.
Yeah.
So the whole debate, I love the comedy piece about the brother said, hey, we're looking at the Confederate flag all wrong. Right? Because at least there was a day when I pulled into a gas station, if I saw a Confederate flag, I knew, hey, this spot isn't for me. Right? And so there is a degree of freedom of speech that I want you, the people are free to use. However, just because you're free to speak what's on your mind or in your heart does not mean that I am obligated to pay you to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? You know, the truth is we're still canceling culture. And all these people who are crying, stop the cancel of culture, are still canceling culture.
Right.
I mean, they're just giant hypocrites if they're complaining when they don't get their way and when they're finally being held accountable. I hear people saying things like, well, if you don't like the movie, don't watch it. If you don't like the song on the radio, don't listen to it. But we have surpassed that at this point of people need to be held accountable for their inappropriate comments. We have become become a society that has accepted this awful behavior as the norm. Whether it's sexism, racism, bigotry, all of these things we have accepted as a part of our culture.
All of these isms.
And all the isms. And we've accepted all these phobias. We've accepted it as part of the norm in this society. And guess what? It's not anymore. It needs to change. So people are being held accountable and they don't like it.
Tell it.
They don't like being held accountable.
And so now here we are with one side of their mouth. They're crying freedom of speech being inhibited, right?
Yep.
First Amendment right being abused. We're no longer a society of Christianity.
Yep.
Our opportunity to worship is being suppressed. All of this nonsense.
It's
right?
nonsense, yeah.
And then yet on the other side, there's this whole movement of the GOP, right? To literally take the right of freedom of assembly away from the people, or at least make it so threatening and dangerous that those who dare to organize it know that they're risking a decade of their life in prison.
Right. So unlike the nonsense BS of their First Amendment freedom of speech being canceled, they are legally violating people's First Amendment rights by passing these anti-riot bills. Now, Florida has been the first to pass it. There are 34 states following suit. And in my opinion, this is just disgusting. Now, I know a lot of people hear this and they think, well, we need these, right?
Sure.
Let's think about all the violence and the deaths and the brutality that happened over the last year and a half from all of these Black Lives Matter protests, right? And all these rallies and all this stuff. So people are thrilled about these anti-riot laws because they're complete support of nonviolence.
Tough governing.
Right. They think it's a good thing, right?
Strong
we need to crack down, right? Support our police. We need to, bring these rioting and protesting down. But people, I want to explain to you what's in the new bill in Florida that was just passed. Now, what this bill entails is it enhances penalties for crimes committed during riots or violent protest, which, okay, people are like, well, they should be prosecuted, right? Okay, well, let's keep going.
Sure.
It allows police to hold arrested people from these riots or protests until their first court appearance. So they are held without bail. This also establishes new felonies for organizing or participating in a violent demonstration. It is a second-degree felony and up to 10 years in prison. 100%.
So what these laws are designed to do is to intimidate liberals or to intimidate Democrats,
right,
or more specifically, those that are protesting injustice against police brutality from lifting their voices to speak against it.
Well, it gets worse. So it also strips local governments of civil liability protection if they interfere with law enforcement in these protests. It interferes with local government's ability to reduce funding for law enforcement. And here is the biggest one of it all, and this is what you all truly need to understand is the bigger problem. It gives police officers 100% discretion on determining whether this is a demonstrating of a peaceful protest or it is a riot.
Because all they need to sense is a feeling.
It's all about their feelings, whether they feel that it is a violent protest or a peaceful demonstration. So let's just give you a couple examples of peaceful protests that were made violent not by the protesters, but by the police officers and or white supremacist groups. So these happened, most of them in 2020. In 2020, North Carolina, a group of peaceful Black protesters marched together hand in hand to the polls for early voting in October of last year. The sheriff's department stopped them and assaulted them and arrested half of them.
So let me get this clear. I don't mean to interrupt you because you're in a great flow of energy. They got the opportunity to deem the nonviolent protests as potentially violent.
Yeah.
Were able to inflict violence against the organized protesters.
Yeah.
Then those who had been inflicted against violence occurred against them would be prosecuted under this new law.
Oh, absolutely. Not only would they be prosecuted, they would receive felonies up to 10 years in prison, and the person who organized this peaceful walk to the polls would then be charged for basically inciting it, for organizing it, and they would also be charged with multiple felonies.
So what essentially you're saying is that all these people that are using Martin Luther King Jr. quotes right now of nonviolence, they would fear these new protesters just as much as they once feared him.
Apparently.
And hated him.
Yeah. So an example of peaceful protesters that the local law enforcement turned violent, not the protesters. In Oregon was a big to-do last year. We know this. We're right next door. All this stuff that was talked about, all the violence in Oregon, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, everything that was going on. But the truth is, most of the protesters were all peaceful, and it turned violent because police officers started attacking peaceful protesters. It was disgusting. Not just that, is then you have also white supremacists that joined the party in Oregon and also were attacking peaceful protesters.
Shooting of paint guns.
Oh yeah, they were paintballing everybody. They were spraying all sorts of chemicals at them. These were peaceful protesters that it turned into this violent rage, not because of them, but because of those who came to stop them. I mean, we also what happened in 2017 when they tried to remove a General Lee statue. The white supremacists came out in force, and we saw what happened there. They came out fully armed, ready for a fight. Counter protesters showed up to say, "Hey, not cool," and violence ensued. I mean, you had a white supremacist running his vehicle through a group of counter protesters. I mean, it was awful. But then we had a president saying, "There's good people on both sides."
No, that you mentioned the vehicle. Mm-hmm. It is my understanding.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yes.
That in such a roadway, peaceful protests, it may have been authorized.
Yeah.
Right. It may be occurring. Mm-hmm. If a person decides that is a highway, that they can run their car down that highway. Yes. And not be prosecuted. I know I'm simplifying it. Yeah,
but no, you're right.
Break that down for us.
According to the new anti-riot bill in Florida, if somebody decides to drive their vehicle through protesters, they cannot be charged with a crime. They are literally protected from this bill. I mean, it's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. So now, Florida's Governor DeSantis said he was so looking forward to signing the anti-bill into law. He was so excited about this. Now, Florida's GOP Senator Ed Hooper, he was asked if he felt this bill contained racist content. And I'm going to read you his response because it was, I had to scratch my head on it for a minute. He says, "Can I tell you this bill is not about racism? Not entirely. I can't know. But I do believe in my heart that at the end of the day, we are a nation of law and order." Now, my question is this the same law and order as Trump shouted from the White House while inciting a deadly insurrection January 6th? Is this the same law and order that they believe in? Because, I mean, that's all we heard, right? Same law and order, Trump, when he supported and encouraged white supremacist groups, saying stand by and stand back. Same law and order as our police officers who are sworn to uphold the law are murdering black and brown people. Is this the same law and order?
Tell it, girl.
I mean, please. Because if this is the same law and order, we have a big problem here. Because that's not law and order.
It's not.
That is not law and order, people. That is what we'd like to call mob rule, which President Trump, the mob boss, was quite good at that.
Interesting because their strategy is to point a finger. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because they are prototypical. The answer to one finger pointing at you means three's at me.
I mean, look, the reality is, while I know and I understand the people who have lived through the violence of riots, and I understand that damage is done.
Don't incite that.
And we
encourage
do
that.
Not encourage or support violence.
Absolutely not.
At all. That is not what we are saying. What we are saying is
we don't initiate. I don't encourage any initiation.
Right. That's not what we're saying at all. What we are saying though is this bill is designed to intimidate people. This bill is designed to make them afraid to assemble, to make them afraid to speak out. This literally criminalizes peaceful protesters, which is a violation of our First Amendment right. Period. While there may be consequences to freedom of speech, this is not the same thing. Right. They are trying to take away the right to peacefully assemble by making people afraid.
They're trying to take away free speech while they're crying about their free speech being imposed.
While they're crying about them being canceled, they are literally putting into law bills that will cancel other people.
You know what comes to mind is the great Dave Chappelle joke.
Yeah, I love Dave Chappelle.
Maybe it was a joke, maybe it was in a speech. I can't quite remember. However, it was something of this nature. The First Amendment is what we all believe and support.
Right.
But they got the second one in case that first one don't work out too well.
There is truth to that, for sure. I mean, look, we have recently seen horrible voting suppression laws being placed in Georgia, as we've talked about many times. We've now got anti-riot laws passed in Florida. 34 states are trying to pass it currently as well. And that is the opposite of what we need right now in this country. Because again, they are trying to create laws to suppress people, to cancel people, while they are taking no accountability for why we even have these problems in the first place.
So good.
They are creating more problems because they refuse to acknowledge or address or hold themselves accountable for the problems. And that is really what this is about. They just want to continue to oppress people so they can continue to further their narratives, further their agendas, and it is not helpful to the American people.
So Tiffany, there is a lot of passion, obviously, a lot of fire, and I love it. But can you bring us to speed a little bit with where is the accountability in America today? Where do we stand with Republicans' accountability, GOP's accountability?
Yeah.
I don't even know if they've officially named a Trump party, because they should.
Right, it's probably coming.
The Trumpist party. Where are Democrats accountable in this? So maybe mention that a little bit as far as where's the accountability coming from at this point?
Right. You know, what we are seeing right now is that sadly the GOP is trying to do everything in their power to not be held accountable for anything. And we saw this greatly with the Derek Chauvin conviction.
Sure.
I was honestly disgusted by GOP lawmakers' responses, by conservatives' responses to the conviction. I mean, so right. They're basically right now playing the narrative that the Democrats bullied their way into essentially terrorizing a jury to feel that they had to convict Chauvin, or there was going to be violence ensued on the streets, there was going to be riots, there was going to be all this stuff that they felt that they didn't have any other choice but to convict him.
Now, where does this sense of pressure come from? Was there?
Well, look,
I watched the trial. I never saw any protesters influencing not one jury member.
No, I mean, there was enough evidence that supported the convictions, and the jury was also charged, as all jurors are with every case, to not watch news, to not be on social media, to not watch TV. These are part of their job requirements as a juror. So if that is the case, then it doesn't matter what people's thoughts were on the outside. It doesn't matter what politician said what, because the juror would not have been influenced by that. The jury would not have, it wouldn't have gone to them.
Right.
And it's just right now what is happening is, for the first time, we see a police officer being held accountable.
And if you would, I'd love for you to comment here in this video, because what your thoughts are on the Derek.
Yeah.
Chauvin.
Chauvin.
I really don't like the man. I'm sorry. I blocked the man because I'd love for us to do a whole video in it.
Yeah.
In regards to it. So if you'll comment here in regards to your thoughts about the trial, about whether you thought mob rule had any factor in it. I'd certainly be interested in that.
Yeah, for sure. But what it comes down to, at least in my opinion, is people are calling for police reform, right? Because it's a problem. And so the Republicans don't want that to happen, because what's going to happen if police officers are being held accountable, then the narrative that Republicans have worked so hard to continue in this country about the criminalization of brown and black people is going to start to change, because the world is going to start to see how corrupt these police officers really are. And I mean, we just had a guy released from prison. I just read the article today. For 2 years, he was in prison over completely falsified arrest record, like completely falsified charges that he was stopped. And it was proven the officer completely lied about all of them. And this man spent 2 years in prison for doing nothing.
And statistically, the DNA is not used in black criminal cases. I mean,
this man was a firefighter, a well-respected black firefighter who had no criminal record, was a good, upstanding citizen, and he still went to prison for 2 years for doing absolutely nothing. And this is where accountability is a problem. So we had the Arizona GOP Senator Kelly Townsend. Arizona, just like Georgia, is trying to pass voter suppression laws to essentially suppress people of color. Now, she told the Republicans, the GOP, I am on board with this bill. I support this bill because she believes the narrative that the 2020 election was fraudulent, that, Trump claimed all these fraud accusations, and she believes that he was not lying to them. So the GOP right now have launched a major investigation into the ballot counting in Mariposa County. Trump is supporting this as well. They are still trying to somehow oppose Biden's presidency, even though he is already our president.
Sure.
But anyway, they're doing a massive recount. Now, mind you, there was a recount. I think there might have been 1 or 2 in 2020.
Right.
And both came back 100% accurate every time they recounted compared to the original one. So the GOP is launching their own private investigation using a third party to recount these votes. Now, the GOP decided, they're going to go ahead and pass these voting laws anyway. So it went up to the House in Arizona to pass, and the senator voted with the Democrats and voted no on this voting suppression bill.
Which I have to commend her.
And, I will definitely commend her. She is in support of the bill, which I don't like. However, what I will say is what she told the GOP, because they had a meltdown and a half. She said to them, I want to see the results of the recount. If what you say and Trump says is true and there is fraud, I want to see it.
Right.
And if it's there, I will vote yes on this new voting bill.
Sure.
Because in her mind, she is now going to help the problem. But if she votes yes now, she will be part of the problem.
Listen, the truth is if they found any form of voter fraud, it would change the game for a lot of us. Okay,
right.
If there was proof and evidence that there was voter fraud, I would relook at everything.
Okay,
right?
I have to tell you something so funny, because I don't think I told you this when I read it, but I read this article from Pennsylvania that they found voter fraud in Pennsylvania. But get this.
It's time to restructure my whole thinking. So come on, break it down to me now.
It was from the Republicans.
Oh, man. Suck-a-duck-it now.
The voting fraud came from the Republicans. And when they were asked about it, their whole thing is, this is literally what they said. Well, voting fraud is voting fraud, and we need to change the laws to protect us from voting fraud, when they were the ones who committed the fraud. I literally I just couldn't believe it.
Cheating is cheating.
I was like, are they really, really saying, well, even though we committed it, it's still fraud, so we still need to fix the system? I'm sorry. It was just too much. It was too much. It really was. Oh my gosh, it was priceless. But anyway, that was a side note, but it was really stinking hilarious. But look, what Kelly Townsend, I don't agree with her support of a voter suppression bill by any means, but I commend her for holding the GOP accountable, saying, hey, let's see the proof before we make these changes.
If there's smoke, there's supposed to be fire.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so, she has gotten quite a bit of heat, and the GOP in Arizona is pretty upset over this whole situation. But I commend her for that, because we need more of that in politics. We need people not afraid to hold their own parties accountable when they are doing things that are not okay.
Ooh, girl, it's on fire.
Yeah.
Right in the middle. Can you believe right in the middle of that episode I had to grab a fire extinguisher and put that fire out? That was the craziest thing ever. I'm just kidding. But it was an emotional ride this episode.
I'm very passionate.
Excited that you were a part of it. Accountability is really the topic that we're talking about. We talked a lot about the cancel culture.
Yeah.
And what that means, and what it means to kind of eliminate the voice of another.
Yes.
Right? What our First Amendment right means, and how far that extends, and where we should be offended by it being taken away, and really where we should defend it, right? A lot of that is so very true. And it's coming to peace in terms with it, but we have to understand that we have to learn how to get along.
Yep.
As the saying goes, we have to learn how to hang together, or we're all going to hang individually.
Yeah.
Right. And so I want to thank you for being a part of this first episode. There's going to be a powerful part 2 to this episode coming out.
For sure.
And I hope that you'll dial back into that. It'll be just a couple days, and we want that to become a part of your repertoire. Please do like, comment, and share this video. And we would love it if, when you subscribe, you would leave a comment below.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to interact with you. It means the world to us that you are part of our community and hanging out with us. And, always share your opinion, whether you agree or disagree. We definitely love those interactions as well. But, thanks for joining us. Make sure you come back for part 2. You're definitely not going to want to miss it.
It's awesome.